Welcome to the Discourse Analyzer AI Toolkit, where articles come alive. You're hearing the audio version of our article. For the full text and an interactive experience, check out the link in the description below. Interact with any section using our AI assistant to enhance your understanding. Let's explore.
Post-structuralism and Discourse Analysis Methods. In Post-structuralism and Discourse Analysis Methods, the article delves into how post-structuralist theory significantly informs and transforms the methodologies employed in discourse analysis. By scrutinizing the inherent instability and multiplicity of meaning in texts, the article elaborates on various strategies to dissect and interpret textual data. It outlines key methodological approaches, including the deconstruction of texts to expose underlying assumptions and the examination of the role of language in constructing reality, thereby highlighting the profound impact of language on perception and social structure. The discussion extends to the dynamics of power and ideology within texts, advocating for an analytical framework that considers both the author's influence and the reader's active role in meaning-making. Overall, the article proposes a comprehensive examination of textual practices that not only enrich our understanding of texts but also challenge traditional notions of fixed meaning and identity, positioning discourse analysis as a critical tool for exploring the interplay between language, power, and society. 1. Analyzing textual practices. Post-structuralism offers a unique lens through which to approach and analyze texts, deeply influencing discourse analysis methods by foregrounding the instability and multiplicity of meaning. Here's how to approach texts with an understanding of this inherent instability. 1. Acknowledge the multiplicity of meanings. Begin by acknowledging that texts do not possess a single, fixed meaning. Instead, they are sites where multiple interpretations can coexist, shaped by the reader's backgrounds, contexts, and the intertextual relationships with other texts. This approach encourages analysts to explore the range of potential meanings rather than seeking a definitive interpretation. 2. Focus on language and its constructions. Language is the primary medium through which meaning is constructed and negotiated. Pay close attention to the choice of words, metaphors, narratives, and the structure of the text. Analyze how language functions not just as a tool for communication but as a practice that shapes our perception of reality. This involves examining the rhetorical strategies, discursive practices, and linguistic features that contribute to the production of meaning. 3. Deconstruct the text. Deconstruction is a methodological approach developed by Jacques Derrida, a key post-structuralist thinker, which involves critically dissecting texts to uncover underlying assumptions, contradictions, and exclusions. Identify binary oppositions within the text, e.g., male, female, nature, culture, and explore how these hierarchies are constructed and challenged within the text. This process reveals the instability of meaning and the ways texts undermine their own assertions. 4. Consider the role of power and ideology. Analyze how texts are implicated in power relations and the dissemination of ideologies. Texts often serve to reproduce or challenge social norms, values, and power structures. Consider whose interests are served by the dominant meanings within the text and who might be marginalized or excluded. This involves a critical examination of the text's context, the author's positionality, and the socio-political implications of its discourse. 5. Embrace the reader's role in meaning-making. Recognize that readers, or audiences, are not passive recipients of texts but active participants in the construction of meaning. Their interpretations are influenced by their cultural backgrounds, experiences, and social positions. Engage with the various ways readers might decode the text and the factors that influence their readings. This perspective aligns with Stuart Hall's encoding-decoding model, highlighting the negotiated nature of meaning-making. 6. Situate the text within broader discursive fields. Understand that texts do not exist in isolation but are part of broader discursive fields. Analyze the intertextual connections between the text and other texts, and consider how these relationships influence its meanings. This includes examining the historical, cultural, and social contexts in which the text was produced and received, and how these contexts shape its interpretation and impact. Approaching texts with an understanding of the inherent instability of meaning requires a flexible, open-ended methodology that embraces complexity, seeks out ambiguity, and acknowledges the subjective nature of interpretation. This approach not only enriches our understanding of texts but also fosters a critical awareness of the ways in which language, power, and ideology are intertwined in the production of meaning. 2. Discourse and power relations. Post-structuralism profoundly influences the methodologies used in discourse analysis, particularly in uncovering the power dynamics within discursive practices. By focusing on how power relations are embedded and reproduced in language, post-structuralist discourse analysis offers a robust toolkit for examining the interplay between discourse and power. Here are several methodologies and approaches to achieve this. 1. Foucauldian discourse analysis. Theoretical foundation. Grounded in Michel Foucault's theories, this approach emphasizes the role of discourse in producing knowledge, subjects, and power relations. Foucault posits that power is not simply repressive but productive, creating subjects and shaping knowledge through discursive formations. Methodology. Identify discourses as systems of knowledge that define what can be said, who can speak, and what is considered true or false. Analyze the rules, institutions, and practices that produce particular discourses and how they function to regulate behavior and construct identities. This involves tracing the historical emergence of discourses and examining their role in broader power-knowledge complexes. 2. Deconstructive analysis. Theoretical foundation. Drawing on Derrida's concept of deconstruction, this methodology focuses on revealing the inherent instability of texts and the ways in which they undermine their own authority. Methodology. Examine the binary oppositions and hierarchies within texts to uncover the assumptions they rely on. Pay attention to the marginal, ambiguous, or contradictory elements of the text that disrupt the dominant reading. This approach highlights how discourses privilege certain meanings or identities while excluding or marginalizing others. 3. Critical discourse analysis, CDA. Theoretical foundation. CDA integrates post-structuralist insights with a critical examination of social inequality and power. It is concerned with how discourse shapes and is shaped by power relations in society. Methodology. Analyze the linguistic features of texts, such as word choice, grammar, narrative structure, and the context of their production and reception to uncover the ideologies and power relations they reproduce. CDA involves a detailed analysis of the discursive strategies used to construct identities, legitimize power, or marginalize certain groups. It also considers the broader social, political, and historical contexts to understand the power dynamics at play. 4. Genealogical analysis. Theoretical foundation. Inspired by Foucault's genealogy, this approach examines the historical processes that lead to the formation of discourses and how they become entangled with power. Methodology. Conduct a historical investigation of the discourses to understand how they have evolved and the power relations they have produced over time. This involves looking at the discontinuities, breaks, and shifts in discursive formations to understand how current understandings and practices came to be and how they might be challenged or changed. 5. Interdisciplinary approaches. Theoretical foundation. Post-structuralist discourse analysis benefits from integrating methodologies from linguistics, sociology, anthropology, and cultural studies to provide a comprehensive understanding of discourse and power. Methodology. Combine textual analysis with ethnographic methods, interviews, or media analysis to explore how discourses operate across different sites and scales. This approach recognizes the multifaceted nature of discourse and power, allowing for a richer understanding of their dynamics. Incorporating reflexivity. An essential aspect of post-structuralist methodologies is reflexivity, acknowledging the researcher's position, biases, and the power dynamics inherent in the research process itself. This involves a critical examination of how one's own positionality and the choices made in research, from topic selection to interpretation, can influence findings and reinforce or challenge existing power structures. By employing these methodologies, discourse analysts can uncover the complex ways in which power is negotiated, resisted, and reproduced within discursive practices, providing insights into the mechanisms of social control, identity formation, and resistance. 3. Subjectivity and identity construction. The examination of subjectivity and identity construction through the lens of post-structuralism within discourse analysis provides profound insights into how discourses shape, limit, and enable various forms of self-understanding and social identification. This approach challenges essentialist and static notions of identity, instead proposing that identities are fluid, multiple, and constructed through discursive practices. Here's how discourse analysis can be applied to explore the construction of subject positions and identities. 1. Analyze the construction of subject positions. Methodological approach. Focus on how texts and discourses call into being certain types of subjects or subject positions that individuals can occupy. This involves identifying the roles, characteristics, and identities that discourses make available to individuals. For instance, examine how media discourses around health construct the responsible citizen as someone who engages in specific health behaviors, thus defining acceptable forms of identity in relation to health and citizenship. 2. Explore the interplay of discourse and power in identity formation. Methodological approach. Investigate how power relations embedded in discourses contribute to the formation and regulation of identities. Utilize Foucauldian concepts like power, knowledge, and governmentality to understand how discourses not only describe but also prescribe identities, often serving the interests of dominant groups. This requires looking at who has the authority to define identities and on what basis. 3. Examine the multiplicity and fluidity of identity. Methodological approach. Embrace the post-structuralist view that individuals inhabit multiple identities that can shift across contexts and over time. Use discourse analysis to reveal how identities are negotiated in different social and cultural contexts, highlighting the contingent and non-fixed nature of identity. This can involve analyzing narrative constructions in interviews, social media practices, or representations in cultural texts to see how individuals adopt, resist, or reformulate the identities offered to them by various discourses. 4. Deconstruct naturalized categories of identity. Methodological approach. Critically assess how discourses naturalize certain categories of identity, such as gender, race, nationality, and render them as taken for granted truths. Employ deconstructive strategies to unpack the historical and social construction of these categories, revealing the arbitrary boundaries and exclusions they entail. This involves questioning the binary oppositions and essentialist conceptions that underpin much of traditional identity politics. 5. Investigate the role of language in identity construction. Methodological approach. Pay close attention to the linguistic strategies used in discourses to construct and perform identities. This includes analyzing metaphorical language, pronoun usage, narrative structures, and other rhetorical devices that shape how identities are articulated and understood. Such an analysis can reveal important aspects of language. It shows how language functions as a site of identity construction. It also acts as a means of resistance or subversion. 6. Consider the impact of sociocultural contexts. Methodological approach. Contextualize the analysis within specific sociocultural settings to understand how broader historical, political, and economic factors influence the construction of identities. This approach recognizes that discourses are embedded within power structures and cultural traditions that significantly shape the processes of identity formation. 7. Reflexivity and critical engagement. Methodological consideration. Maintain a reflexive stance throughout the analysis, acknowledging the researcher's own positionality and how it influences the interpretation of discourses and identities. Engage critically with the ethical implications of representing identities in research, striving to avoid reifying or marginalizing the voices and experiences of those studied. By applying these methodologies, discourse analysts can uncover the complex processes through which discourses construct, contest, and transform subjectivities and identities. This approach not only enriches our understanding of identity as a discursive construction but also opens up possibilities for challenging oppressive identity norms and envisioning more inclusive forms of subjectivity. Conclusion. The exploration of textual practices, discourse and power relations, and the construction of subjectivity and identity through a post-structuralist lens reveals the intricate ways in which language and discourse are interwoven with the fabric of social life. This perspective emphasizes the inherent instability of meaning, the power dynamics embedded in discursive practices, and the fluid and constructed nature of identities. By acknowledging the multiplicity of meanings, focusing on language's constructive roles, employing deconstructive and Foucauldian analyses, and embracing the active role of readers in meaning-making, we unlock deeper insights into the mechanisms through which societies and individuals navigate the complexities of identity, power, and reality. Through these methodologies, discourse analysis transcends mere textual interpretation, becoming a critical tool for unpacking the socio-political contexts and power structures that shape and are shaped by discourse. It challenges us to consider how identities are not fixed entities but are continually being performed and renegotiated within the constraints and possibilities offered by discursive practices. This approach not only deepens our understanding of the role of discourse in social and cultural formations but also empowers us to envision and work towards more equitable and inclusive social arrangements. Frequently asked questions. How does acknowledging the multiplicity of meanings affect textual analysis? Acknowledging the multiplicity of meanings shifts textual analysis from seeking a singular, authoritative interpretation to exploring the range of potential interpretations that a text can generate. This approach recognizes that texts are rich sites of meaning, shaped by the reader's backgrounds, contexts, and the relationships between texts. It encourages analysts to consider various perspectives and the inherent instability of meaning. What is the importance of focusing on language in discourse analysis? Focusing on language is crucial because it is through language that meaning is constructed, negotiated, and contested. Language shapes our perception of reality, and analyzing its use in texts helps uncover the underlying assumptions, ideologies, and power relations. By examining linguistic choices, metaphors, narratives, and structures, analysts can reveal how texts produce and reproduce social and cultural meanings. How does deconstruction contribute to understanding texts? Deconstruction, a methodology developed by Jacques Derrida, contributes to understanding texts by uncovering their inherent contradictions, assumptions, and exclusions. It involves critically dissecting texts to challenge binary oppositions and hierarchies, revealing the text's instability and the ways it undermines its own assertions. This approach exposes the complexities and ambiguities within texts, enriching our understanding of their meanings. In what ways can discourse analysis uncover power relations embedded in texts? Discourse analysis can uncover power relations by examining how texts reproduce or challenge social norms, values, and power structures. By analyzing who benefits from the dominant meanings within a text and who might be marginalized, discourse analysis reveals the ideological underpinnings and power dynamics at play. This involves a critical examination of the text's context, the author's positionality, and the socio-political implications of its discourse. Why is the reader's role in meaning-making significant in post-structuralist discourse analysis? The reader's role is significant because it emphasizes that readers are active participants in the construction of meaning, not passive recipients. This perspective recognizes that interpretations of texts are influenced by readers' cultural backgrounds, experiences, and social positions, leading to a diversity of readings. By engaging with various ways readers might decode texts, analysts can understand the negotiated nature of meaning-making. How do post-structuralist methodologies address the construction of subject positions and identities? Post-structuralist methodologies address the construction of subject positions and identities by analyzing how discourses call into being certain types of subjects or identities that individuals can occupy. This involves identifying the roles, characteristics, and identities made available through discourses and examining how power relations and societal norms contribute to the formation and regulation of identities. These methodologies emphasize the fluidity and multiplicity of identity, challenging essentialist views. What role does reflexivity play in post-structuralist discourse analysis? Reflexivity is crucial in post-structuralist discourse analysis as it involves acknowledging the researcher's position, biases, and the power dynamics inherent in the research process itself. Reflexivity requires a critical examination of how one's own positionality and choices made in research influence findings and contribute to understanding power structures. It fosters an awareness of the ethical implications of research and the representation of identities. How can discourse analysis contribute to challenging oppressive identity norms and envisioning more inclusive forms of subjectivity? Discourse analysis can challenge oppressive identity norms by deconstructing naturalized categories of identity and exposing the arbitrary and exclusionary boundaries they entail. By critically analyzing the discursive practices that construct and perform identities, discourse analysis reveals the possibilities for resistance or subversion of dominant norms. It opens up spaces for alternative narratives and forms of subjectivity that are more inclusive and reflect the diversity of experiences and identities.